Hi, this is Lou. Welcome to my channel. And today I've got some little bits of paper that I've torn up, and I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment, a little bit of a play with these, and I'm going to do a little mini forest scene on each one. So because they're little as well, I could make these into Christmas cards. I could add them onto the front of a card. So we'll see if they work out. That's what I'll do. If they don't, they're experiments. Doesn't matter. So I wanted to use little bits of paper rather than working my sketchbook today, because I know I want to use a lot of water, and this is cotton paper, so I know it can take that. And then I've got just one colour that I'm going to play with today. This is Perylene green, nice dark green. And then I've got a couple of other things. This is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's just a really white paint. I've got a little bit of white gouache on my palette there, which I might use as well. And then this, which I've just got, which I want to experiment with a little bit. I may only just use this on one thing, but this is an acrylic ink. It's a gold acrylic ink, and it's from Rowney. So I want to create a nice kind of washy sky on this one. And I'm going to start at the top and just put a line of colour along here, and I've made it quite dilute, so it's got a fair bit of water in it. And I'm just going to, I've not washed paint off my brush, I've just added some water onto it, and I'm going to run that line of water just underneath that one there. I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. Just another dip into the water. Let's bring that down, and I'm just adding more water on and bringing this water down onto the rest of the paper. You can go back and smooth the edges if you want to. You can also add more colour, so I can add just a bit more colour at the top and then slowly blend it in. Like that. Now that's all I want to do for this one for now. I'm going to come back to it later, but I want this to be completely dry when I do. For this one I want to do a similar thing, but I want my light area to be in the middle, and I want it to be like darker green all the way around the outside. So I can paint the green around the edges. Oops. A bit too far. Let's just bring that out a bit. And I can turn my paper as well. So there we go, I've got green all around the edge, and I'm going to add the water onto my brush and just bring that towards the centre. And actually I can start with a little circle of water right at the centre, so you can see there, it's wet in the middle, and just bring that out. And then touch it to the green at the edges and allow it to blend. I want this to look more round than square, so I'm just blending in a kind of circular motion in that in-between bit, like that. And I think this could be a bit darker at the edges, so I can just drop a little bit more colour in there, and especially in the corners here. And again, some nice circular motions for blending that. For this one again I want to put in a sky, but I want it to be even more subtle, so I'm just painting with water on this one, and I'm going to cover the whole of the paper apart from the very edges. And then I'm just taking a tiny bit of green and I'm just going to sweep that into it's going to be the sky, something like that. And maybe it's a little darker at the top. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I need for that one. So for this one I'm going to put in layers of hillside and then some trees in the foreground. So I'm going to use the same colour and I'm going to use pretty much the same method. So I've switched to a slightly smaller brush, but you don't have to. And I'm going to put in like the line of a hillside. So something like that. And then I can put my line of water underneath that and allow it to blend down. Now, it depends how distant your hills are as to whether you'd see any trees in them or not, but if your distant hillside has trees on it, you'll have a slightly uneven kind of line, little jagged line. So I'm just using the tip of my brush and just poking it up above that line, and giving me that sense of just like treetops there. I'm going to go right to the edges there. Now I've washed my brush, so it's got water on it, and again I can just bring that water down and blend this line out. Now you don't have to go all the way to the bottom if you don't want to. You can kind of let it fade out earlier because we're going to be putting more layers of trees and kind of misty things in front of them. So if you just wanted to kind of leave it there, then you could do. But I've brought mine all the way down. Just I think it's force of habit rather than anything else. So again, I'm going to leave this to completely dry. So for this one I want to paint like a misty forest scene where you see the trunks of the trees, and this kind of light area here would be like the light coming through the forest. So I'm going to start with painting like the background trees, and I'm painting them fairly light, so I'm adding a fair bit of water into the green. And I can start by painting some tree trunks. So let's just start here. And I think this is maybe not quite dry yet. So these are they're going to be a little bit misty. Oh well. Okay. Never mind, I'm going to keep painting with this one. If I have to do this again, then I will do. So I'm just using the tip of my brush and drawing it upwards and allowing the line to get lighter as I get towards the top. And the further away the trees are, the thinner that line will be. And each one branches out a little bit, and then I might have to go back and reinforce the trunk a little bit more because the trunk will be a bit thicker than the branches are. And the closer the tree is to you as well, the thicker the trunk will probably be, unless it's a young tree. So you've got two variables there. You've got how far away it is, and then like how big the tree is to start with. And I think I just need a few here in the middle, just little wispy thin trees, some branches coming off. There we go. So that's actually not looking too bad. I thought I was going to have some nice bleeds and things from this tree here where it was still a little bit wet when I started painting, but actually I think it kind of adds to the misty, imprecise nature of this. So that's one layer, and I'm going to put this one to one side and I'll come back to it later. I'm going to paint my next layer on here, and I'm just doing the same thing again. Another layer here, and it doesn't really matter where your trees go, where your line goes, just as long as it kind of looks organic, like natural, something like that. And again, I can do that thing of taking some green and just popping it up above that line. And this line of trees is going to be closer, so I can be a bit more obvious about these little pokey bits. Some of them are darker. And then exactly the same thing again, some water at the bottom. And just blend that all out, right down to the bottom of the page. This has my ghostly trees in it, and I want to do exactly the same thing again. I just want to put in another layer of trees in here that are slightly less ghostly. So there's still a fair bit of water on my brush, but I've got more pigment in there too. And I'm doing exactly the same thing, drawing my brush up the page, allowing it to wiggle around a little bit and letting the tip draw some branches and letting them just spread out and just keep going. Right, let's have another tree here. So there's my branches, so the trunk needs to be a bit thicker. And then maybe there's another branch coming out there like that. And let's see, let's have one here. The thing I want to do now is put some shadows in. So if the sun's back here, you'll end up with long shadows from these trees here across this empty space. And they will be kind of fanning out, so that one's slightly in the wrong direction. Make sure the shadows are connected to the bases of the trees. And then you can go in again with a paper towel. Just take out some of those areas. Make them look a little bit more misty and mysterious. For this one I'm going to do a hillside here with some kind of empty skeleton trees on it. So I'm just drawing a thin line of the green along there and blending it out with water. You've seen me do this several times now. But this one, just the tiniest bit of green. So from here I'm going to pull out some tree trunks, and I'm using a very fine brush for this one. Let's see, 1, 2, I'll have a few of them. 3, 4, 1 there. And then these are going to be like bare trees, little skeletons of trees. So around each one I'm imagining a little kind of circular or semicircular shape, and I'm filling it up with little strokes of the brush. So around here I've got this kind of like circular shape here. I'm just filling that up with little stripes. There's another one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And actually I want to make this one a bit taller. This one is going to be a bit taller again. And I'm filling it out with little branches. And this one is going to overlap the one next to it. And then in the sky, a couple little birds. For this one I'm going to put some more trees in here. This time I'm going to draw the tops of the trees. Have another one there. So just a vertical swoosh and a couple of little bits on either side. Another one maybe here. And then I'm just going to go down and do little crosses, really. So just like one side and then the other, until I'm joining all of those together. I'm going to add some water. Yeah, I'm just going to add some water and blend all that down again. And go in, fill in any areas I think need a little bit more. Now this looks like a nice, interesting, misty woodland scene. If I want to make it into a Christmas scene, then I'm going to need to give it a little bit of snow, something like that. So I'm just going to go along the tops of some of the branches with some of this bleed-proof white on a little brush. Just anywhere you think the snow might stick. Maybe some on these trunks as well. So I've mixed some of this bleed-proof white with some water, so it's got some movement to it, and I'm just going to try creating some snow by tapping my brush like this. And you can use the very tip of the brush as well to put snow into some of these areas. Probably go overboard doing that. So I've painted a fourth one here in pretty much the same way as I did the first one. The only difference is that I've just got one layer of big trees in there rather than all of those distant landscape layers. I want to do a nice big tree. In the centre, not in the centre, slightly off centre. Let's make it a bit taller. And I'm making this one very dark and very wet. So I'm putting a lot of pigment in, but I'm also going to add a lot of water as well. I'm going to do a little one next to it here. Again, lots of pigment and lots of water. And then as we get to the bottom, I'm going to fill this whole section in here. Right down to there. And maybe I need another just little top of a tree there. And I'm adding in even more water into this one because what I want is I want this to run. I'm going to take some of this gold ink and then I'm just going to, in a couple of areas, drop some in. Maybe some there. And I'm just going to let that go. See what it does. Maybe even more water just to help that gold move around into some of the other areas. Right, I'm going to leave that. We'll see what it looks like when it's dry. So once your little paintings are dry, you can, if you like to, make them into cards. So I've got these card blanks which are just a little bit bigger than my paper. Almost like it was designed that way. So that can go on there. So I just need a little bit of adhesive on the back and I'm going to stick it down. There we go. So here's my little painting experiments, and what do I think? Well, I quite like the way this one turned out. It's kind of quite simple, but I like these kind of graduated layers and the misty look to it. This one, I think maybe ended up being a little bit too busy with the snow and everything. And this tree here, I think was still a little bit wet where I splattered the paint into it and it's kind of run a little bit. But I don't know if you'd noticed that if I hadn't pointed it out. Another thing that's bothering me is that if the sun was here, all of my kind of shadows would be kind of in a nice fan shape, kind of coming out this way, whereas they all end up kind of going in the same direction, which is okay, but I think it would have looked better if I'd been a little bit more consistent about where I put the shadows. But that's why I do little experiments like this, is so that I can work things out on a small scale before kind of moving on to do a big piece. I quite like the sparseness and the basicness of this. I think I need to work a little bit on the trees, but I think there's a nice idea in here that may make a good tutorial, so keep an eye out for that possibly. And this is the one with the gold. I have to say, some of this paint is still a bit wet, and it's been like about an hour since I painted it. But you do get a little bit of nice shimmer with the gold. I think it's spread out quite evenly in the end, whereas I thought there'd be a few more runs and things like that. But again, that's why you experiment. And I think what I'd like to try is to try some bigger puddles of paint and then dropping the ink in and seeing what happens to it. I think that could be quite interesting. So thank you for watching today. I really hope that you've enjoyed this. If you found it interesting and helpful, then do let me know. If you make any of these little paintings, then I'd love to see them. You can post your work on Instagram, tag me at Lou Rachel Davis, and I do love seeing what you made. If you liked today's video, then please do give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more like this, then do subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye bye.